Hey friends! My name is Desiree, aka Mama Friendly, and I do all sorts of videos on my channel, from cooking videos to planner videos, vlogs, hauls, homeschool videos with a Disney twist, a little bit of everything. So if any of this sounds like fun to you, I hope that you'll subscribe and join me on my YouTube adventure. Today's video is the latest installment in the cookbook collab. So this is hosted by Tamra at Southern Wife Everyday Life, and every month we all get together and create recipes from our favorite cookbooks. On a personal note, every month I've been trying to bring you guys a new Cuban recipe because I want to share that part of my culture with you, but also because I'm challenging myself to make the recipes gluten and dairy free. I've been eating gluten and dairy free for almost 7 years now, and so there's a lot of authentic, typical recipes that I grew up eating that I haven't been able to have in a really long time because of the nature of how they're prepared. So I'm challenging myself to adapt these traditional recipes in a way that satisfies the craving but still allows me to stick to my allergy-friendly lifestyle. Enter Made Whole. This cookbook is from Christina Kerp. She is a fellow Cuban Miamian, and we actually graduated from the same university. We might have been there at the same time actually, but we never met. In any case, this whole book is keto paleo recipes, which means that by the fact that they are paleo, they are naturally gluten and dairy free. So the adaptation has been made for me. And because she's a Cuban that was living in Miami, she has a lot of the same preferences and palate that I have. So one of the recipes that's in here is croquetas de jamón. Now you might have heard of croquettes, right? I think most people have. Croquettes typically are a potato or meat filling that's ground up into almost like a paste and then breaded and fried. Croquetas de jamón, or ham croquettes, are extremely popular in Cuba. It's very much a typical food. You see it everywhere for breakfast. You see it, in sandwiches. You can't go to any gathering or party without finding a tray of them for people to munch on. Croquetas they're ubiquitous in Miami culture. They're everywhere. But because they are breaded, and typically they are made with a bechamel sauce to keep the filling together, which is basically flour and milk, right? Gluten and dairy. I haven't had a croqueta in a very, very long time. So I was super excited to find a croqueta recipe in this book because I knew that it would fit my dietary needs, but I was also pretty sure that it would be delicious because it was a Cuban that was making them. So they have to hit the spot, right? Well, my friends, I'm here to tell you, they can't all be winners, but all the same, I wanted to share the recipe with you because if you're on a similar journey as me, maybe you can learn from my mistakes, or maybe you can take what you've seen today and kind of better them. In any case, I want to go ahead and show you how I made Whole's croquetas de jamón. But before we get into the recipe, I want to remind you that there is a playlist for the collab, so check it out in the description box after you've watched my video so you can see what all my friends did this month. And while you're at the description box, I'm gonna have the Amazon link for this book down below as well. I've made so many recipes from this book. Actually, a couple of them I've already featured on the channel, and none of them have steered me wrong. They've all been delicious. This one did not work out the way I hoped, but it was probably due to user error. So in any case, if you're on a keto or paleo or both journey, if you just want a healthier version of traditional Hispanic foods, highly, highly recommend the book, so check it out. And without any further ado, let me show you how I tried to make paleo croquetas de jamón. As usual, I'm gonna start with my ingredients. First, you need a pound of boneless ham steak diced. This is not the cleanest ingredients here, so I don't know if this is actually paleo, but it's what I had, so it's what I'm going to use. A half cup of full fat coconut milk, 3 large eggs, a teaspoon of dried parsley, a teaspoon of onion powder, a pinch of ground nutmeg, 2/3 of a cup plus a teaspoon of coconut flour, and make sure you have that divided. And then you're also going to need 1.5 cups roughly of coconut oil, maybe more, for frying. perhaps this was my first mistake, but I decided I have loads of bacon fat saved up for frying, and so rather than use coconut oil, let me use up what I've already got, which is the bacon fat. The flavors should work well because this is a ham-based dish. We've got bacon, pork on pork. How could we go wrong? I don't know if it really made that much of a difference. It is still a paleo fat. It's an approved fat. But maybe if I'd gone with the coconut oil, it could have been different. I don't know. I diced up my ham and I've got it here in the food processor. So I'm just pulsing it until it's extremely fine and crumbly. Not quite a paste, but definitely a lot finer than it was to start. Next, I'm going to just right into the food processor add my coconut milk, my eggs, the dried parsley, the onion powder, the nutmeg, and the 1 teaspoon of the coconut flour. We want to blend this together until a moist dough forms. The cookbook suggests using either a 5-quart Dutch oven or a cast iron skillet over high heat to fry the croquetas. So I'm heating up my oil in a cast iron Dutch oven. The oil should be approximately 2 inches in depth, and you can add more than the 1.5 cups it called for if necessary to achieve that. So while the oil heats, I'm gonna prepare the croquetas. I've got the rest of that coconut flour in a little sort of shallow bowl here. I'm taking about 2 tablespoons of the ham paste right out of the food processor. I've unplugged it first, of course, and I'm gonna try to make the croqueta shape and then just kind of bread it in that coconut flour and set it aside to wait for the oil to finish heating up. You gotta basically make almost like a ball, football shape sort of, and then just kind of gently flatten it into an oval. This was about the time I realized that this might not work out the way I'd hoped. I was having a very hard time getting the croquetas to keep their shape. The ham paste just felt way too wet. And so I was trying to incorporate a little bit of the coconut flour, or a little more, I suppose, into the ham paste. Coconut flour has this quality where it needs to absorb the liquid around it in order for the texture to be correct. And so I figured if I get a little more coconut flour and let them sit for a bit before I fry them, hopefully that will help bind and firm everything up, and we'll have some luck. I don't know if it quite worked out, but stay tuned and see. I sprinkled a little bit of coconut flour into the oil, and once it started bubbling, I knew it was hot enough. So I decided to do about 4 or 5 croquetas at once so that I wouldn't overcrowd them. And they want you to deep fry. So I have enough oil in here where once all the croquetas were in there, that's basically what was happening. After about 3-4 minutes, they got a little more golden than I was expecting. So I went ahead and flipped them to cook for another 3 to 4 minutes. So I'm tasting the first batch and they're a little burnt and very hot, but the flavor was spot on. You can see I've got a little happy dance going here. I was very okay with the results, but I did turn the oil down just a bit to try to get more of a golden color and less of this, burnt dark brown color. But that's when I realized they were falling apart in the oil. So I decided to switch gears. This is no longer like part of the recipe officially, but I decided to use a different pan, and now I've just got regular vegetable oil in here. So if you decide to go the vegetable oil route, the croquetas will no longer be considered paleo, but they are still gluten and dairy free. So just keep that in mind. Again, I heated the oil up to the temperature that it needed to be. I dropped in about 4 because it's a smaller pot, and I gave them 3 or 4 minutes before trying to flip them. As you can see, the color on these, I think, is much nicer, much truer to what they're supposed to be. Some of them did still burst, but I felt like the flavor was not as good here. I think that the flavor of frying in the bacon fat really helped overall, and the fact that I was just using a neutral vegetable oil, the flavor definitely suffered compared to the first batch. So I am now extracting the third and final batch, and you can see they got a bit more color, a lot more color than the second batch did. And these I actually had the least amount of success with as far as keeping them together. So here's my final product. We've got the first batch at the top, the second batch next to it, and then the third batch is on its own plate over here. I tried the second batch and the texture was better, I guess, but the flavor was not as good as in the first batch. And then for the third batch, that was actually my least favorite because the texture was not great. And also at this point, it no longer really tasted like croqueta. It sort of just tasted like oil. It tasted like fried. I would definitely make this recipe again, but I would have to tweak it and experiment with it, which I'm more than happy to do. It might not end up paleo at the end. It might end up just gluten and dairy free, but I think we have a good base here to work with. It's just a matter of trying it out, trying out different things and seeing what sticks. So there you have it, friends. Like I said earlier in the video, they can't all be winners, but I'm hoping that by sharing my process, maybe you guys can come up with a better version. After the fact, I told my mom how they kept falling apart no matter what oil I used, no matter how long I waited, because the coconut I hoped would absorb, the coconut flour would absorb some of that moisture and kind of help solidify everything from everything up. But it didn't work out that way. So she ended up sending me a recipe for a vegan and gluten-free bechamel, which I could have used in the filling to kind of tighten everything up, and it also would have been more authentic to the original croqueta recipe. The problem with this is that by using it, it's no longer paleo because it does use rice flour, but it is gluten and dairy free all the same. So in case you'd like to try that, I'm gonna include the link to that recipe down below. I would make the bechamel and then include it in the filling before you start balling it up and flouring it in the coconut flour. Something else I could have tried that I didn't do because it wasn't in the book, but I could have maybe made la croqueta and then put them in the fridge to let them firm up, or hopefully have them firm up some before frying them. Either way, they did all pop in the oil, which was unfortunate, but the ones that kind of maintained their shape enough for me to pull out and try, texturally, not what I'd hoped for. Again, a bechamel would have helped smooth the paste out and make it feel more authentic. But other than that, the flavor was spot on. The nutmeg was perfect. The parsley was perfect. It tasted like a croqueta. It was not ideal, but it certainly hit the spot for this cubana. So I would still advise you or recommend that you try the recipe if you've been missing out. Maybe try some of the tweaks that I'm mentioning and see if that works out better for you. Either way, I wholeheartedly recommend the cookbook because, like I've said earlier, there are so many recipes that I've already made from it and they've all turned out absolutely delicious. I'm certain that it was user error that didn't allow this one to work out the way that it was meant to. But I still absolutely think that this cookbook is a great one for you to have. Before you go, make sure you check out that playlist so you can see what all my friends made as well. And as always, I want to thank Tamara for hosting this collab every month. It's always so much fun and I love watching everybody's videos to get meal inspiration. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, I hope that you will please give it a big thumbs up. I'd also love it if you would subscribe and click that notification bell because I post at least 3 times a week and I wouldn't want you to miss a minute. Thanks so much again for watching. Bye!